Can angels make us good? They're good. They will God's will, which is good. And God's will for us is to be good. So can angels make us good? The answer is no, they cannot. Even God cannot make you good. Why? Because goodness is a choice. Goodness is voluntary. God does not violate the logical law of non-contradiction. So even God does not force you to be good, because that's making you do something voluntary in an involuntary way. That's a self-contradiction. So if even God doesn't force you to be good, angels certainly don't. They help, but that's not forcing. I can't force you to believe something. I can argue, I can persuade you, I can give you reasons, I can condition you, I can push you in a certain direction, but I can't carry you there. And neither can angels. But they can help, just as human friends can. They're God's instruments. But we have to use the instrument. We have to play the instrument. Angels don't detract from human freedom and human activity. They enlarge it. God always does that. Grace perfects nature. It doesn't set nature aside. That's a very basic principle of all Catholic theology. So the more the presence of God is realized, the more perfectly and naturally and powerfully all secondary causes come into flourishing. It's like light. Light perfects every color. It transcends all colors, but it doesn't rival any color. The more light there is, the more blue is blue, and red is red, and purple is purple. So the more God is here, and the more his angels influence you, or you let them, the more perfectly human you are, not the less human. That's why in The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf, who by the way is an angel, Tolkien said so, is an enabler. He's a warrior. He could knock people around, zap, zap, but he doesn't do it. The hobbits become great warriors under the influence of Gandalf. And that's what angels want to do with us. They can affect our minds too, as we affect each other's minds freely, but not by force. They teach, they counsel, they praise, they blame, they exhort, they command, just as we can do to each other. They suggest things. Suggestion is not forcing. Angels rarely argue. In fact, I'm trying to think of any reliable example in the lives of the saints where an angel compels somebody to come to a conclusion by argument. I can't think of it. They tell stories, they influence the imagination, they leave you free. Devils also can do that. They can influence your imagination. They can't force your will, and they can't force your mind. But they can get into your imagination and your emotions, because those are not totally free. Those are partly free. Your soul, your spirit, has two powers that animals don't have at all, namely intellect and will. Those are totally free. Your body is very much like the body of an animal, although it's the body that has a life from this immortal soul, and therefore it shares in the image of God and in human dignity and in your human essence. Yet you can just look at the body and say, that is a very clever ape, and all that happens in there happens by physiology and animal instinct. But then there's something in the middle. Emotions. You don't have them without a soul. You don't have them without a body. If angels have emotions, they're angel emotions, not human emotions. For instance, angels don't fall in love. Angels don't feel fear as we do, or desire as we do. So human emotions are sort of half spiritual, half physical, deeply influenced by the body and physical things, deeply influenced by the soul. So both angels and demons can use the imagination powerfully. That's an area of the spiritual life that I think we tend to neglect. We think about the soul, and we think about the body, and we try to have the soul have the same relation to the body as a good rider has to a good horse. But what about that middle thing? What about the imagination? That's like the saddle and the stirrups. In the past, the Catholic imagination was a tremendous cultural and civilizing force. Catholic art, Catholic architecture, Catholic music, that probably did more to effect Catholic teaching than overt preaching and philosophizing and moralizing. And secularists will still respect the Catholic intellect, unless they're very prejudiced, and Catholic morality, unless they're very prejudiced. But where's Catholic art today? Once upon a time, we made the moving pictures. We've got to get back into that if we're going to move the culture. Well, angels can help us. They inspire you. The ancient Greeks, were losing their religion. The Olympian gods were so silly that people who thought about whether they're true or not inevitably came to the conclusion, well, at most they're just symbols. You can't take these stories in Homer literally. But there were 9 of the Greek divinities that even the skeptics continued to believe in. They were the muses. They were the inspirers of art. The Greeks were so impressed by the power of art, especially music, that they said, well, that's got to be divine inspiration. I personally know 3 ex-agnostics or atheists who told me, separately, not influenced by each other, that the primary reason they came back to the faith was the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. They all said, here's my proof of the existence of God. There is the St. Matthew Passion, therefore there is a God. And they weren't joking. You look at the Pietà, and that's a more powerful sermon than you can preach in words. Well, angels inspire you to do that. And demons tempt you to do the opposite. It's certainly demons behind pornography, which is America's biggest industry. So we got to fight on those battlefields where the fighting is the hottest. Can angels do physical miracles? Can they move matter? Sure. It's easy. Even ghosts can go through walls. Matter can't move through matter. Spirit can. Rocks can't move through rocks, but even we can send our spirit, our mind, and our will, and even our imagination through rocks. Just imagine what it's like outside now. You're not outside. You can imagine it. Just imagine you're in Boston instead of Minneapolis. It's easy. It's 1,000 miles away. Instant. Well, if even we can do that, certainly angels can. They can move as fast and as easily as human thought, more so. And sometimes they make bodies move. For example, they can stop speeding cars. I don't know how they do it, but I think they can do it from a distance. As, for instance, a human corporation can cause effects at a distance. Imagine a corporation in New York City deciding the fate of a group of people in a lawsuit in San Francisco. The corporation is present wherever it makes a difference. Well, if even human corporations can do that, angels certainly can.